On a peaceful morning, a wealthy man, dressed in elegant clothes, takes his 6-year-old wheelchair-bound daughter for a special outing he had promised. When the girl, afraid of heights, realizes they are getting dangerously close to the edge, her little hands tremble. She asks, "Dad, why are we here?" The father remains silent, his heart racing as he realizes what he is about to do. Still, he pushes her forcefully into the abyss. He turns away and flees to his luxury car, hearing the child's scream fade into the cliff. But he didn't know that a large white horse witnessed everything. What happens in the next seconds leaves everyone in utter shock. Before we begin, if you love animals like us, please subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss any heartwarming stories. Thanks. Now, back to our story. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Sophia felt the cool morning wind brush against her face. Her small fingers tightened on the metal arms of her wheelchair as she watched the clouds painted pink in the sky. At 6 years old, she already knew the meaning of the word different. Her large, expressive brown eyes gazed at the horizon with a mixture of fascination and unease. Her father, Edward Montgomery, walked silently, pushing her chair along a path she had never traveled before. "Where are we going, Daddy?" Sophia asked, her soft voice almost lost in the morning breeze. Edward didn't answer immediately, his expensive dress shoes leaving precise marks on the dirt path. He kept his shoulders squared, his impeccable suit contrasting sharply with the wild nature around them. His eyes, unlike his daughter's, held no trace of emotion. Nearby, Snowy, the family's majestic white horse, lifted his head from grazing, noticing the unusual movement. The animal, who had always shown a special connection with Sophia, watched intently as father and daughter approached the edge of the bluff. His restless hooves scraped the ground, as if sensing something wrong on this seemingly peaceful morning. "It's a special outing," Edward finally replied, his voice controlled and distant. "I thought you'd like to see the sunrise from up here." Sophia tried to smile, but something in her father's tone made her uneasy. Ever since he announced his marriage to Regina 3 months ago, things had changed drastically at the Montgomery estate. The wind blew harder, ruffling Sophia's brown hair. She pulled her little pink cardigan tighter around herself, feeling a chill that wasn't just from the cold. Regina had never hidden her dislike for the girl's presence. A defective child, she used to mutter when she thought no one was listening. A burden on the family. Snowy neighed in the distance, a sharp, worried sound that made Sophia turn her head. The horse had always been her only true friend on the estate since her mother passed away 2 years ago. "Snowy's nervous, Daddy," she commented, her voice trembling slightly. "Maybe we should go back." Edward stopped the wheelchair very close to the edge of the bluff. The abyss opened before them, deep and intimidating. Sophia's heart hammered when she realized her wheelchair wheels were inches from the precipice. "Daddy," she called out, fear now evident in her voice. "You know, Sophia," Edward began, his voice taking on a cold edge she had never heard before. "Sometimes we have to make difficult decisions in life, decisions others might not understand." He let go of the wheelchair handles, taking a step back. "Regina is right. You're a burden I can no longer carry." Snowy began to gallop toward them, his hooves thundering against the ground. The animal seemed to sense the imminent danger but was too far away to reach them in time. Sophia felt tears stream down her face as she understood what was about to happen. "Please, Daddy," she whispered. "I promise I'll be better." The sun finally emerged completely on the horizon, bathing the bluff in its golden light. It was at that moment that Edward made his final decision. With a swift, unhesitating movement, he pushed the wheelchair forward. Sophia felt the world spin as the chair tilted over the edge of the cliff. The girl's scream mingled with Snowy's desperate neighing. The fall seemed to last an eternity. The wheelchair tumbled through the air, Sophia still strapped in by the seatbelt. By some inexplicable miracle, the chair snagged on a rocky outcrop several yards below, catching between gnarled branches and jutting stones. The impact was hard, but the girl remained conscious, trembling and crying silently. Up above, Edward glanced down briefly, ensuring there were no witnesses besides the horse, who now stood at the cliff's edge, neighing furiously. Without showing any remorse, he straightened his tie, turned his back, and began walking back toward the mansion, already formulating the story he would tell about his daughter's disappearance. Sophia, trapped on the rocky ledge, looked up through her tears. The blue sky seemed to mock her situation, while the sound of Snowy's hooves echoed above, as if the animal refused to abandon her. There, suspended between the sky and the abyss, her struggle for survival began. Jack Miller had worked as the foreman on the Montgomery estate for over 2 decades. That morning, while feeding the animals in the stable, he noticed something different about Snowy's behavior. The white horse, normally calm and obedient, was agitated in a way he had never seen before. His dark eyes showed unusual restlessness, and his neigh seemed more urgent than usual. "Easy, boy," Jack murmured, approaching the animal with a bundle of hay. "What's gotten into you today?" He knew every animal on the property well, but Snowy had always been special. The foreman remembered perfectly the day the horse arrived at the ranch, along with little Sophia. It was as if the two were born to be friends. The thought made him frown. He hadn't seen the girl that morning, which was strange. Usually, even before breakfast, she'd be at the stables talking to Snowy in her own special way. The little girl's absence caused an uneasy feeling in his chest. Snowy pushed the hay away with his muzzle, refusing to eat. His eyes were fixed in the direction of the bluff, his ears pricked, alert. Jack followed the animal's gaze, watching Mr. Montgomery's silhouette descending the path leading to the mansion. There was something odd about his posture, an even greater stiffness than usual. "Morning, boss," Jack called out, raising a hand in greeting. Edward Montgomery merely nodded briefly without slowing his pace or looking directly at the foreman. His elegant clothes were slightly dusty, a detail that didn't escape Jack's experienced eyes. Snowy neighed again, louder this time, stamping his hooves forcefully on the ground. The animal tried to leave the stable, but Jack held him by the reins. "Whoa! Easy there, boy. What's with you today?" It was then he noticed something lying near the horse's hooves, a small pink satin ribbon, the kind Sophia always wore in her hair. Jack's heart skipped a beat. Something was definitely not right. In 20 years working on the ranch, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now, all his senses were screaming that something was wrong, very wrong. "Maria," he called to his wife, who was just stepping out of the small foreman's cottage. "Have you seen little Sophia today?" Maria frowned, adjusting her apron. "Not yet," she replied, worried. "I always see her from the kitchen window when she goes to see Snowy." Her eyes met her husband's, sharing the same unease. "Did something happen?" Jack held the pink ribbon between his calloused fingers, thoughtful. "I don't know yet," he muttered, more to himself than to his wife, "but I'm going to find out." He knew Edward Montgomery well enough to know the boss wasn't a man for morning strolls, especially not toward the bluff. At the mansion, raised voices began to echo. Regina, Mr. Montgomery's new wife, gestured nervously while speaking to one of the maids. "What do you mean you can't find Sophia? She has to be somewhere." Her tone, however, didn't convey genuine concern, but rather irritation. Edward appeared at the mansion door, still adjusting his tie. "Don't worry," his voice sounded firm and controlled. "Sophia has been taken for special treatment in another city. I accompanied her to the transport myself this morning." Jack, observing the scene from afar, felt a chill run down his spine. In all his years of work, he had never heard of any treatment. Why hadn't the boss mentioned anything to anyone before? Snowy remained restless, pulling hard on the reins toward the bluff. The animal seemed desperate to communicate something, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if holding a terrible secret. Jack looked again at the pink ribbon in his hand, then at the path leading to the precipice. A decision began to form in his mind. "Maria," he called softly. "Pack a bag with water and some supplies, and don't say anything to anyone." His wife nodded, knowing that tone of voice well. It was the same one he used when something serious was happening. The sun was already high in the sky when Jack released Snowy's reins. The horse immediately started walking toward the bluff, occasionally stopping to look back, as if checking if the foreman was following. Jack clutched the pink ribbon in his pocket and followed the animal, his heart heavy with a premonition he prayed was wrong. The sun began to set when Sophia realized she would have to spend the night there, trapped among the rocks of the bluff. Her small hands were scratched from trying to hold on, and fear seemed to grow with the lengthening shadows around her. The wheelchair, miraculously wedged between gnarled branches and rocky outcrops, creaked with every gust of wind. "Mommy always said stories help us be strong," she whispered to herself, remembering the times her mother sat beside her bed, telling fairy tales before sleep. That's how she used to face the difficult nights in the hospital when treatment seemed endless. Above her, Snowy continued his tireless vigil. The white horse refused to leave the spot, neighing occasionally as if to say, "I'm here. I won't abandon you." The sound of the horse's voice was Sophia's only comfort in that moment of absolute loneliness. "Remember when we met, Snowy?" She spoke a little louder, her voice trembling with cold and fear. "I had just come back from the hospital, and you were the only one who didn't look at me differently because of the wheelchair." A tear escaped down her cheek as she recalled that special day when the white horse approached her on the estate, gently nuzzling her hand. The wind blew stronger now, bringing the night's chill. Sophia tried to curl up as much as possible in her chair, silently thankful for the pink cardigan she wore. Her thoughts drifted to the mansion, where Regina was likely celebrating her absence. "Now she can be the only lady of the house," she muttered bitterly, surprising herself with the maturity of her understanding. In the growing darkness, shadows began to dance on the rock walls. Sophia squeezed her eyes shut, remembering another story her mother used to tell about a princess trapped in a high tower who never lost hope. "I won't lose hope either," she promised herself, even as a sob escaped her lips. Snowy neighed again, this time louder and more insistent. Sophia opened her eyes just in time to see a small light moving at the top of the bluff. Her heart leaped. Was someone looking for her? But the light soon disappeared, leaving her alone again with her dashed hopes. "At least you're with me, Snowy," she called to the horse, finding comfort in the sound of his hooves gently stamping the ground above. It was strange how, even though she couldn't see him clearly in the dark, his presence made her feel less alone. The night advanced slowly, bringing unfamiliar sounds that echoed off the bluff. Each noise made Sophia jump, imagining terrible creatures lurking in the shadows. To distract herself, she began to softly sing a lullaby her mother used to hum, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Stars began to dot the dark sky like tiny diamonds scattered on a black velvet cloth. Sophia watched them, trying to find the constellations her mother had taught her to identify. "Look, Snowy," she whispered. "That one is the Big Dipper. Mommy said it protects all lost travelers." The cold intensified, making her teeth chatter. Hunger began to gnaw at her stomach, and thirst made her throat dry and raw. But what hurt most was the feeling of abandonment, the certainty that her own father had put her in this situation. "Why, Daddy?" she asked the night, her voice small and broken. "I tried so hard to be the daughter you wanted." The tears returned, but this time she let them fall freely, mingling with the dew that was beginning to form. Snowy answered with a soft whinny, as if comforting her. The familiar sound made Sophia smile weakly through her tears. "You're my guardian angel, you know," she told the horse, "a white angel on 4 legs." The moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting its silvery light over the bluff. For a moment, Sophia could see Snowy's majestic silhouette outlined against the starry sky, his white coat gleaming as if made of light itself. "I'll tell a story for both of us," she decided, trying to keep her voice steady. "Once upon a time, there was a girl and her magical horse." And so, between tears and smiles, stories and fears, Sophia faced her first night on the bluff, clinging to hope as tightly as she clung to her wheelchair, wedged among the rocks. Jack followed the tracks left by the wheelchair along the path leading to the bluff. The afternoon sun was already beginning to weaken, casting long shadows across the dirt path. Snowy walked ahead of him, occasionally stopping to check if the foreman was keeping up, his dark eyes filled with an urgency Jack had never seen before. In the Montgomery mansion, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Maria, Jack's wife, discreetly observed the goings-on while carrying out her daily chores in the kitchen. Regina, the new lady of the house, paced the rooms with nervous energy, rearranging objects and giving contradictory orders to the staff. "I want all of Sophia's belongings removed from her room," Regina ordered one of the maids, her voice sharp as glass. "Now that she's in treatment, we'll turn that space into something more useful." Her high heels clicked against the marble floor as she supervised the removal, a satisfied smile playing on her painted lips. Edward Montgomery remained in his study, the door locked, the curtains drawn. The occasional sound of drawers opening and closing, and papers being handled, leaked into the hallway. Maria, passing by with a tea tray, noticed the smell of something burning coming from under the door. Meanwhile, at the bluff, Jack found the marks where the wheelchair had stopped at the edge of the precipice. His heart skipped a beat when he noticed the deep gouges in the ground, indicating a sudden movement. Snowy whinnied softly, approaching the edge and staring intently downward. "Oh my God," Jack murmured, kneeling to examine the marks more closely. Years of working the land had sharpened his instincts, and every fiber of his being screamed that something terrible had happened there. Carefully, he approached the edge of the bluff, his experienced eyes scanning the rock face for any sign. That's when he heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible, but definitely real sob echoing among the rocks. Snowy immediately pricked his ears, neighing in response. The foreman felt his entire body go cold as he understood what it meant. "Sophia," he called out, his voice trembling with emotion. "Sophia, are you down there?" The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity until a faint sound reached his ears. "Uncle Jack." In the mansion, Maria found a partially burned piece of paper in the garden trash bin. Before she could examine it more closely, Regina appeared suddenly, snatching the paper from her hands. "This is trash," she said curtly. "Focus on your tasks, Maria." The foreman's wife nodded submissively, but her observant eyes caught an important detail. They were medical documents, and Sophia's name was clearly visible in one of the unburned corners. In the study, Edward continued his frantic task. On his desk, a pile of documents awaited destruction, medical reports, physical therapy records, even the will of his deceased first wife, which guaranteed Sophia a considerable inheritance upon turning 18. "We can't afford to have a problematic heir," Regina had said the night before, her words dripping with venom. "Think about our future, Edward. Everything we can build together without this weight dragging us down." At the bluff, Jack leaned as far over the edge as he dared, trying to pinpoint the source of the voice. His heart nearly stopped when he finally saw her. The wheelchair was miraculously wedged between some rocks and branches, and in it, huddled and trembling, was Sophia. "Hang on, little one," he shouted, tears streaming down his weathered face. "I'm going for help. Snowy will stay here with you." The horse, as if understanding, planted himself firmly on the spot, his eyes fixed on the girl below. Jack stood up, his legs shaking. Anger and indignation churned in his chest along with an urgent sense of responsibility. He knew he needed to proceed with extreme caution. Edward Montgomery was a powerful man with connections throughout the region. A hasty accusation could be disastrous. "Hold on, my girl," he whispered, glancing one last time at the bluff before setting off to find help. Dusk painted the sky in shades of orange as Jack arrived breathlessly at the house of his friend Pete, an experienced climber who lived on the neighboring property. His hands trembled as he pounded on the wooden door, the urgency making his heart race. "Pete, Pete, for God's sake, open the door," he called out, his voice thick with emotion. His friend appeared quickly, alarmed by the evident desperation in the foreman's voice. "Jack, what happened, man?" Pete asked immediately, noticing his friend's agitated state. His experienced eyes, accustomed to assessing risky situations, realized something very serious was happening. Meanwhile, at the Montgomery mansion, Maria discreetly organized a small bag of provisions. Her years working in the kitchen meant she knew every corner of the pantry, and she carefully selected items that wouldn't be immediately missed: granola bars, water bottles, a small first aid kit. Regina strolled down the upstairs hallway, admiring the spaces she planned to remodel. Stopping in front of Sophia's room, a satisfied smile played on her lips as she imagined the new decor. "Finally, I can have my art studio," she murmured to herself, already visualizing the changes. At the bluff, Sophia fought against sleep and exhaustion. The whole day, exposed to the sun, had left her skin sensitive, and thirst was becoming unbearable. Snowy continued his tireless vigil, whinnying softly from time to time as if reminding her she wasn't alone. "Uncle Jack will come back," she repeated to herself like a mantra, clinging to the foreman's promise. Her small hands, scratched and sore, held firmly onto the chair's arms. The wind, starting to grow colder as night approached, made the metal frame creak ominously. At Pete's house, Jack quickly explained the situation, his words tumbling over each other in his rush for help. The climber listened with growing attention, his face hardening as he understood the gravity of the situation. "We need proper gear," Pete declared, already moving toward his climbing equipment storage. "Ropes, carabiners, harness, and more importantly, we need to do this without attracting attention." "Mr. Montgomery has too much influence around here," Jack agreed, helping his friend gather the necessary equipment. "He won't find out," Pete assured him, his eyes determined. "I know that bluff like the back of my hand. I've climbed it dozens of times, but we need to move fast. The weather's changing." Indeed, dark clouds were beginning to gather on the horizon, promising a stormy night. Jack looked anxiously at the sky, knowing every minute was precious. His calloused hands nervously clutched Sophia's pink ribbon, still tucked in his pocket. Maria, in the mansion, watched Edward Montgomery through the kitchen window. The boss paced the garden with a cell phone in his hand, speaking in a low but clearly agitated voice. Fragments of his words reached her: "Documents, transfer, no one can know." Snowy, high on the bluff, sensed the change in weather even before the first raindrops fell. His protective instinct made him whinny louder, as if trying to warn Sophia of the impending danger. "It's okay, Snowy," Sophia called out weakly, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Mommy always said, every cloud has a silver lining." Her voice trembled on the last word as a lone tear traced a path down her dirty cheek. Pete and Jack carried the equipment hastily along the trail leading to the bluff, each lost in their own anguished thoughts. The climber mentally reviewed every detail of the rescue they needed to perform, while the foreman silently prayed for little Sophia's safety. "We'll need light," Pete commented, noticing the darkening sky, "and we have to be quick. Those clouds spell trouble." A distant clap of thunder rumbled through the valley, making Sophia shrink further into her chair. Snowy responded with a nervous whinny, his hooves restlessly stamping the rocky ground. The first drop of rain fell, hitting the girl's face like an icy tear from the sky. "Please, Uncle Jack," she whispered, her voice nearly lost in the wind that was starting to blow harder. "Please come back soon." The rain began to fall more heavily as Pete and Jack reached the bluff. Snowy greeted them with an anxious whinny, his eyes gleaming in the growing darkness. The animal seemed to fully understand the gravity of the situation, staying close to where Sophia was trapped. "Sophia," Jack called out, his voice competing with the sound of the wind. "We're here, little one. I brought help." The foreman's heart clenched as he heard the faint reply from below, almost lost among the elements. Pete was already working quickly, his experienced hands preparing the rappelling gear. Every movement was precise, calculated, even under the pressure of time and the worsening weather. "I'll go down first," he explained, adjusting his harness. "I need to assess the chair's stability and how it's secured to the rocks." At the Montgomery mansion, Maria watched the approaching storm through the kitchen window, her hands nervously clutching the rosary beads she carried in her apron pocket. The sound of thunder made the whole house shake, and the lights flickered ominously. Regina paced the hallways like a restless ghost, occasionally stopping to look out the window. Her beautiful face was marked by a worried expression that didn't match her usual mask of indifference. "Edward," she called, finding her husband in his study. "What if someone finds out?" Edward looked up from the documents he was still organizing, his expression as cold as ice. "Nobody is going to find out anything," he replied curtly. "In a few days, everyone will have accepted that Sophia is undergoing specialized treatment. And in a few weeks, when we announce that she—" His voice faltered for a moment, but he quickly composed himself, that she didn't survive the complications. At the bluff, Pete began his descent, illuminating the path with a headlamp attached to his helmet. The rain made the rocks slippery, and the wind didn't help, causing the rope to swing dangerously. Jack held the other end of the rope firmly, his hands protected by special gloves. "I see her," Pete shouted after descending several yards. "Sophia, honey, don't move. I'm coming to you." The girl lifted her rain-soaked face, her eyes shining with a mixture of fear and hope. The wheelchair was precariously balanced between two rocky ledges, supported by some sturdy branches that had grown in the cliff's crevices. It was a true miracle the structure had held for so long. "Mr. Pete," Sophia's voice trembled, "I'm scared. The chair is making weird noises." As if to confirm her words, a metallic creak echoed ominously among the rocks. Pete finally reached the level where Sophia was trapped. With careful movements, he approached the chair, assessing the situation. "It's going to be okay, little one," he assured her, keeping his voice calm despite the concern he felt. "I'm going to get you out of here." Snowy, at the top of the bluff, remained attentive to every movement. The horse seemed to feel the tension of the moment, his muscles trembling beneath his drenched coat. From time to time, he whinnied softly, as if encouraging Sophia. "Jack!" Pete shouted upward. "I need you to prep the second harness. I'll have to unstrap her from the chair and hoist her up separately." The foreman immediately began preparing the additional equipment, his hands shaking not just from cold but from anxiety. The rain now fell in dense sheets, hampering visibility. Occasional lightning illuminated the scene like photographic flashes, revealing the precariousness of the situation. Pete worked methodically, ignoring the water streaming down his face. "Sophia, listen carefully," he said, looking directly into the girl's eyes. "I have to unstrap you from the chair. It'll be scary for a moment, but I promise nothing bad will happen to you. Do you trust me?" The little girl swallowed hard, gripping the chair's arms tighter. "I trust you," she replied in a whisper. "But what about Snowy? Will he be okay up there?" Pete felt his heart ache at the girl's genuine concern for the horse, even in such a dangerous situation. "Snowy is strong," he assured her, beginning to prepare the harness for Sophia. "He's watching over us from up there like a guardian angel." A particularly loud clap of thunder shook the bluff, making the wheelchair creak ominously. There was no more time to waste. The rescue had to happen now before the storm worsened further. Pete took a deep breath, preparing for the most delicate part of the operation. With hands trembling from the cold rainwater, Pete began to release the straps holding Sophia to the wheelchair. Each movement had to be extremely calculated. One mistake could be fatal. The girl kept her eyes tightly shut, her lips moving in a silent prayer her mother had taught her. "Almost there, little one," Pete murmured, trying to keep his voice steady despite the howling wind. The harness was already secure around Sophia's small body, connected to a second rope that Jack held firmly above. It was now or never. At that exact moment in the Montgomery mansion, something unexpected was happening. Maria, continuing her chores in the kitchen, heard raised voices coming from the study. The storm muffled parts of the conversation, but some words escaped clearly through the slightly ajar door. "What do you mean the will can't be invalidated?" Regina's voice sounded hysterical. You promised you'd handle it, Edward, that we'd solve our problem. The lawyers say they need the death certificate, Edward replied, his voice tense. Without it, the inheritance remains tied up in her name. And now that damned foreman is acting strangely, asking questions. Maria felt her heart race. Without making a sound, she moved closer to the door, her body trembling with the weight of what she heard. In the kitchen, the old radio broadcast the weather forecast. The storm would be the worst in years. At the bluff, Pete finally managed to release the last buckle on the chair. Now, Sophia, he said firmly, I'm going to lift you into my arms. It'll be quick, I promise. His experienced hands were already positioned to make the transfer. That's when everything changed. Intense lightning split the sky, followed instantly by a deafening clap of thunder. The impact was so strong it made the rocks tremble. The wheelchair, already unstable, began to slide. Now! Pete yelled, grabbing Sophia in a swift movement as the chair plummeted into the abyss. The girl's scream mingled with the metallic clang of the chair hitting the rocks during its fall. Snowy, up above, neighed in panic. The sound echoed through the bluff like a battle cry, overpowering even the thunder. Jack held onto the rope with all his strength, his boots planted firmly in the muddy ground. Pete began the ascent with Sophia secure in his arms, the double harness ensuring that even if he slipped, the girl would be protected. Don't look down, he instructed gently. Look up at Snowy. See how he's watching over us? Sophia nodded weakly, her eyes fixed on the white silhouette of the horse, standing out against the stormy sky. In the mansion, Maria could no longer contain herself. Tears in her eyes, she picked up the kitchen phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. Hello, Sheriff's Office, her voice trembled. I need to report something terrible. Pete and Sophia finally reached the top. Jack immediately wrapped the girl in a blanket Maria had provided, while Snowy approached, gently touching her face with his muzzle. You did it, little one, Jack whispered, tears mixing with the rain on his face. You were so brave. But his words were cut short by a sound slicing through the night, police sirens getting closer. The storm began to subside, as if it had played its part in the drama. The clouds slowly drifted away, revealing a moon that bathed the scene in its silvery light. Sophia, still trembling in Jack's arms, looked at Snowy and then at her rescuers. Is everything going to be okay now? She asked, her small voice full of hope. Pete and Jack exchanged a significant look, knowing the real battle was just beginning. The sirens were getting closer, and with them would come the moment of truth. The red and blue lights of the police cruisers illuminated the night like a surreal kaleidoscope, reflecting in the puddles left by the storm. Sophia, still wrapped in the blanket, remained in Jack's arms, while Snowy stood protectively beside her. The white horse, his coat now gleaming under the moonlight, seemed larger and more imposing than ever. Sheriff Brody, Jack greeted the tall man with a serious expression who approached. Thanks for coming so quickly. The sheriff surveyed the scene with experienced eyes, the soaked girl, the climbing ropes, the men's agitated state. The report we received is very serious, the sheriff replied, his deep voice echoing in the night. Maria told us everything she heard. We need to get the little girl to the hospital first, and then. His eyes narrowed. Then we're going to have a long talk with Mr. Montgomery. In the mansion, chaos had erupted. Edward paced his study, knocking over objects and papers as he tried to destroy evidence. Regina, slumped on the leather sofa, had lost all her aristocratic composure. Her face was stained with tears and smeared makeup. How did she survive? Edward muttered repeatedly, running his hands through his hair in despair. It was impossible from that height with the chair. The approaching sirens made his face turn even paler. Maria watched everything from the kitchen doorway, her heart pounding, but her conscience finally at peace. Years of loyalty to the Montgomerys couldn't override what was right. Her hands still trembled as she held the rosary beads, but her eyes showed unwavering determination. "I need to tell you something," Sophia said softly as paramedics examined her in the ambulance. Her large eyes sought Jack's. "Snowy, he tried to warn us from the beginning." "When Daddy?" Her voice faltered for a moment. "When he took me to the bluff, Snowy started acting differently. He knew." Jack held the girl's small hand, his heart aching. "Of course he knew, little one. Snowy has always been your guardian angel." The horse, as if understanding, approached the ambulance, his muzzle gently touching Sophia's shoulder. Sheriff Brody coordinated the approach to the Montgomery mansion. The cruisers formed a silent perimeter around the property, their lights cutting through the darkness like luminous knives. Officers positioned themselves strategically, following orders relayed in whispers. "Edward Montgomery," the sheriff's voice boomed through the megaphone. "This is the sheriff's office. Come out with your hands up." The ensuing silence was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of glass shattering inside the house. Pete, still wearing his climbing gear, spoke with investigators, describing the rescue in detail. "The chair was wedged between the rocks," he explained, his voice still shaky with adrenaline. "It was a miracle she stayed there for so long. If it weren't for Snowy." The white horse remained a constant presence beside the ambulance, refusing to move away from Sophia. His intelligent eyes followed the paramedics' every move, as if assessing whether they were properly caring for his charge. "He doesn't have to stay alone, does he?" Sophia asked anxiously when the paramedics mentioned taking her to the hospital. "Snowy needs to come with me." Her small hands clutched the blanket tightly, the fear of separation evident in her voice. "Don't worry," Jack reassured her, stroking the girl's wet hair. "I'll take care of him, and as soon as you're better, you can see him every day." A sob escaped Sophia's lips, but this time it was one of relief. At the mansion, the sound of doors being forced open echoed through the night. Officers entered quickly, their flashlights cutting through the darkness of the luxurious rooms. Edward was found in his study, sitting in his leather chair, an empty glass in his hand, and partially burned documents scattered around him. "It's over," he said simply as the handcuffs clicked onto his wrists. Regina, found in the master bedroom, offered no resistance. Her world of privilege and cruelty crumbled before her eyes. Outside, the moon now shone brightly, as if wanting to illuminate the truth hidden for so long. Snowy neighed softly, a sound that seemed both a celebration and a promise that better days were coming. The small-town hospital had never witnessed such commotion. In the pediatric wing, Sophia occupied a special room, its windows overlooking a garden where, surprisingly, a white horse stood guard. Snowy had followed the ambulance the entire way, and not even the hospital security guards had the heart to prevent his constant presence beneath the room's window. "He really is special," commented Dr. Helen Ramsey, adjusting the foredrip in Sophia's arm. The doctor, a kind lady with graying hair and a gentle smile, had been captivated by the story of the girl and her equine protector. "I've never seen anything like it in 30 years of practice." Sophia, now clean and warm, rested among soft pillows. Her eyes constantly sought the window, where she could see Snowy's familiar silhouette. The horse occasionally lifted his head, neighing softly as if to say, "I'm still here." In the hallway, Jack and Maria spoke with Sheriff Brody. The couple had become key witnesses in the case, especially after Maria revealed all the suspicious conversations she had overheard at the mansion. "The documents we managed to recover are quite incriminating," the sheriff explained, flipping through a folder. "Edward tried to burn the evidence, but we salvaged enough. The first wife's will, altered medical records, even a detailed plan to forge hospitalization documents." Maria squeezed her husband's arm, remembering the nights she heard Regina and Edward whispering in the study. "They planned everything," she murmured, her voice trembling with indignation. "They wanted to make it look like the girl had been sent for treatment and then—" She couldn't finish the sentence. In the room, Sophia received a special visitor. Pete, still in his climbing clothes, had brought something that made the girl's eyes light up, a small camera. "I thought you might like to capture the view from your window," he smiled, helping her position the camera. "Snowy's become such a sensation. People are already calling him the hospital guardian." Indeed, a small crowd gathered daily in the garden, admiring the white horse, who faithfully remained at his post. Children brought carrots and apples, which Snowy politely accepted, but he never strayed far from Sophia's window. "He always knew, didn't he?" Sophia asked softly, adjusting the camera's focus. "Since that morning, he tried to stop Daddy." Her voice no longer held fear when speaking of her father, only a mature sadness that seemed beyond her 6 years. Pete sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. "Some animals have a special gift, Sophia. They see things that we humans sometimes take a while to notice. Snowy isn't just a horse. He's your guardian angel on 4 legs." At the sheriff's office, Edward and Regina faced their first interrogations. The couple, once so elegant and arrogant, could now barely look at each other. The mask of sophistication had fallen, revealing the true nature of their souls. "How could you?" the sheriff asked, his voice thick with disbelief. "She's just a child." Edward remained silent, but Regina began to talk, her words tumbling out as if a dam had broken. "The inheritance," she confessed between sobs. "All the money was tied up in a trust for Sophia. Edward couldn't touch any of it until she turned 18, and I." Her voice failed. "I didn't want a disabled stepdaughter." Back at the hospital, Dr. Ramsey reviewed Sophia's latest tests. "You're a fighter," she declared, smiling at the girl. 2 days on the bluff and no serious complications. "I think you had someone up there looking out for you." "And down here too," Sophia replied, glancing out the window where Snowy now rested under the shade of a tree. The horse lifted his head, as if sensing the girl's gaze, and neighed softly. Jack and Maria, now appointed Sophia's temporary guardians, organized the details to take her to their home as soon as she was discharged. Their own daughter's room, now grown and married, was being prepared with loving care to welcome the new resident. "And Snowy?" Sophia asked for the 100th time, worried about her protector's fate. Jack smiled, stroking the girl's hair. "He's coming with us, of course," he assured her. "I'm already building a special stable right near the house. He'll be able to see your window from there, just like he does here at the hospital." A smile lit up Sophia's face, the first genuine smile since that fateful morning on the bluff. Outside, Snowy responded with a joyful whinny, as if understanding that a new life was about to begin for all of them. The day of discharge arrived with the promise of a new dawn. The miller's small cottage, once modest and quiet, now buzzed with activity and anticipation. Maria had spent the entire week preparing every detail of Sophia's room, filling it with cheerful colors and small touches that made the space feel magical. "Look what I found in the attic," she said, hanging an old dreamcatcher near the window. The object, made with delicate threads and white feathers, danced gently in the breeze. "It was my daughter's. They say it keeps nightmares away and only lets good dreams through." Jack, meanwhile, had transformed the old barn into a cozy stable for Snowy. With help from Pete and other neighbors, he built a special structure that allowed the horse a clear view of Sophia's bedroom window. The love and care in every detail were evident. "It's like we're building a bridge between 2 hearts," Pete commented, helping install soft lighting in the stable, a bridge between a special girl and her 4-legged guardian angel. At the hospital, Sophia prepared for her departure. Dr. Ramsey performed the final checks, but her kind eyes focused more on the spark of anticipation in the girl's face than on the medical results. "You know, Sophia," the doctor began, putting away her stethoscope, "in all my years of practice, I've learned there are different kinds of medicine. Sometimes, the best medicine is love." She paused, looking out the window where Snowy maintained his constant vigil. "And you have an extra special dose of that medicine waiting for you out there." News of Sophia's story had spread through the small town, touching hearts and mobilizing the community. When the hospital's adapted van pulled up in front of the miller's house, a small crowd was already waiting to welcome her. Children held colorful balloons, and a handmade banner read, "Welcome to your new home, Sophia." Snowy, who had followed the van the entire way, now trotted eagerly around the vehicle, as if he couldn't wait to show Sophia her new space. His joyful neigh echoed through the air, making everyone smile. "Look at that," Maria whispered to Jack. "It's like he's throwing his own welcome party." The foreman nodded, too emotional to speak. The new wheelchair, donated by a local charity, had white accents that perfectly matched Snowy's coat. Sophia smiled when she noticed, her small hand stroking the chair's arms with approval. "It's like it was made especially for us," she commented as Jack helped her out of the van. Snowy immediately approached, his muzzle gently touching the girl's face in a gesture of affection that drew an "ah" from the crowd. Inside the house, surprises awaited Sophia. The room had been adapted with ramps and special grab bars, allowing her to move around more independently. A low shelf displayed storybooks, and on the bed, a new photo album waited to be filled with happy memories. "This is just the beginning," Maria explained, showing Sophia every detail of the room. "We're going to build so many good memories here, you'll see." Her eyes shone with restrained tears of joy. From the bedroom window, Snowy's new stable was perfectly visible. The horse was already exploring his new space but always returned to the spot where he could maintain eye contact with Sophia. It was as if an invisible thread connected them, stronger than any adversity. "Did you know horses can sense our feelings?" Pete explained, sitting beside Sophia as they watched Snowy. "They're like mirrors of our emotions. And that one," he pointed to the white horse, "has a heart as big as yours." The afternoon progressed gently, and the small welcome celebration continued in the garden. Neighbors had brought cakes and treats, turning the occasion into a true community party. Sheriff Brody also stopped by, bringing not only his official presence but also a special gift, documents granting temporary guardianship of Sophia to Jack and Maria. "It's just the start of the process," he explained to the Millers, "but you are, for all intents and purposes, her legal guardians now." The smile on the sheriff's face made it clear he couldn't be more pleased with the arrangement. The weeks passed like pages of a book, gently turned by the wind. At the Miller house, each day brought a new discovery, a new smile, a small victory in Sophia's healing journey. Mornings began with Snowy's gentle whinny, a melody that had become the girl's favorite alarm clock. "Good morning, my white angel," Sophia always called from the window. And Snowy would respond by lifting his head, his intelligent eyes shining with unconditional love. Maria watched these daily interactions with a heart overflowing with tenderness, silently thanking the blessing this horse represented in the girl's recovery. The twice-weekly therapy sessions had become less of an obligation and more of an adventure, especially after the therapist, Dr. Diaz, discovered the healing power of Snowy's presence. "I've never seen such a deep connection," she commented during one session, observing how Sophia opened up more easily when the horse was nearby. "It's like he understands every unspoken word." Sophia explained, her small hands playing with Snowy's white mane as she talked about her feelings. "When I talk about what happened on the bluff, he gets closer, you know, like he wants to protect me from the bad memories." Progress was visible, not only emotionally but also physically. With the help of special equipment and lots of encouragement, Sophia began to develop more strength in her arms, becoming more independent in her wheelchair. The Miller's garden had been adapted with paved paths, allowing her to explore the space freely. "Look who's becoming an expert maneuverer," Jack smiled, watching Sophia skillfully navigate the garden with Snowy trotting patiently beside her. The horse had developed an impressive instinct for matching the wheelchair's pace, never too far ahead, never too far behind. News about Edward and Regina arrived like distant echoes of a nightmare that was gradually losing its power. The legal process continued, and Sheriff Brody assured them justice would be served. But at the Miller house, the focus was on building the future, not dwelling on the shadows of the past. "You know what I miss most about Mommy?" Sophia asked one afternoon as Maria braided her hair. The way she told stories. Each character had a different voice. Her eyes filled with tears, but there was a smile on her lips. Sometimes I tell stories to Snowy, trying to do the voices like she did. Maria felt her heart clench but kept her hands steady on the braids. Your mom would be so proud of you, little one, she said softly. You have her same gift for seeing the magic in simple things. Sophia's room had transformed into a sanctuary of happy memories. Photos covered an entire wall, Snowy at different times of the day, Sophia smiling during therapy sessions, small achievements lovingly documented. The album she received on her arrival day was already half full, each page telling the story of her new life. Look at this one, Pete commented during a visit, pointing to a particular photo. In it, Snowy lay on the grass, his head gently resting in Sophia's lap as she read a storybook. Looks like a painting, doesn't it? The sunlight making his coat shine, your smile so serene. The nights, once feared for frequent nightmares, now had a special ritual. After dinner, Sophia would go to the window to say goodnight to Snowy. The horse invariably positioned himself where she could see him clearly from her room, like a white sentinel guarding her dreams. The nightmares are getting fewer, Sophia confided to Dr. Diaz during a session. I think it's because of the dream catcher Aunt Maria hung up and also because I know Snowy is always there watching over me. The therapist smiled, making a note in her pad. And how do you feel about that? She asked gently. Sophia thought for a moment, her hands distractedly stroking Snowy's coat, who lay beside her during the session. I feel safe, she answered finally. It's like I have a bigger family now, Uncle Jack, Aunt Maria, Snowy, even the dreamcatcher is part of it. Her eyes shone with wisdom beyond her years. Mommy always said, family is who takes care of you with love. I think I understand what she meant now. The small-town courthouse had never witnessed such a significant day. The trial of Edward Montgomery and Regina had finally arrived, and with it, a wave of emotion that seemed to touch everyone present. Sophia, dressed in a light blue dress chosen especially for the occasion, held Maria's hand tightly as her wheelchair was positioned in the courtroom. Outside the courthouse, something extraordinary was happening. Snowy, having followed the miller's car there, stood in front of the building, surrounded by a crowd of admirers. The white horse, now a local celebrity, seemed to understand the importance of the day. He might not be physically inside, Pete whispered to Sophia, but his spirit is with you. The girl nodded, touching the small silver horse pendant she wore around her neck, a gift from Jack to give her courage. Judge Thompson, a man with graying hair and kind eyes, observed the scene with particular interest. In 40 years on the bench, he had never encountered a case that stirred the community so deeply. When Edward and Regina were brought into the room, a heavy silence fell over everyone. Sophia, the judge called gently, I know this is difficult, but can you tell us what happened that morning? All heads turned to the small figure in the wheelchair, who took a deep breath before beginning. With a clear, steady voice that surprised everyone with its maturity, Sophia recounted the events of that fateful morning. She spoke of the special outing, Snowy's agitated behavior, the moment her father pushed her toward the abyss. Her words, though soft, carried the weight of undeniable truth. And Snowy, she continued, a small smile appearing on her face, he never gave up on me. He stayed up there, calling until Uncle Jack realized something was wrong. Silent tears streamed down Maria's face, while Jack kept a protective hand on the girl's shoulder. Edward, sitting in the defendant's dock, couldn't look directly at his daughter. His hands trembled visibly, and his arrogant posture had completely crumbled. Regina, beside him, sobbed quietly, her face a mask of belated regret. The prosecutor meticulously presented the evidence, the partially burned documents, the employees' testimonies, the security camera footage showing Edward's car returning alone that morning. Each piece of the puzzle fit perfectly, forming a devastating picture of greed and cruelty. A loud neigh came from outside, making everyone jump. Snowy, as if sensing the critical moment, made his presence known even through the thick courthouse walls. Sophia smiled, clutching the pendant around her neck. "Your Honor," the prosecutor's voice echoed through the room, "we have before us not just a crime against an innocent child, but an attack on humanity itself. What Edward Montgomery and Regina did goes beyond common cruelty. It was a premeditated act of pure malice against his own daughter." The public defender, assigned to the case after all private attorneys refused to represent the couple, struggled to build a defense. The evidence was overwhelming, and Sophia's serene presence in the room destroyed any attempt to justify the unjustifiable. "Before I pronounce the sentence," Judge Thompson said, adjusting his glasses, "I'd like to make an observation. In all my years on the bench, I've learned that justice doesn't always come solely from written laws. Sometimes, it comes from the heart of a child who, even after suffering the unthinkable, can still remain sweet and hopeful. Sometimes, it comes from the loyalty of an animal who teaches us the true meaning of unconditional love." At that moment, as if responding to the judge's words, Snowy neighed again. The sound, this time, seemed to carry a note of triumph. Sophia smiled, knowing her protector was celebrating the victory of justice in advance. "Edward Montgomery and Regina Alvarez Montgomery," the judge's voice thundered through the room, "in light of the evidence presented and the severity of the crimes committed." The silence was absolute as everyone awaited the verdict that would forever change the destiny of a family. Judge Thompson's sentence echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap of justice. Edward Montgomery and Regina were sentenced to the maximum penalty allowed by law. In addition to prison, all their assets were to be transferred to a special trust fund in Sophia's name, managed by her new legal guardians, Jack and Maria Miller, until she reached adulthood. More than punishing the guilty, the judge declared, this court has a duty to ensure Sophia has a secure and happy future. His kind eyes turned to the girl. "And considering the bonds of true love we have witnessed here, I also order her definitive adoption by the Millers, if this is the wish of all parties." Maria covered her mouth with her hands, tears of joy streaming down her face. Jack hugged Sophia with all the care and love in the world, while the girl smiled, a smile so bright it seemed to illuminate the entire room. Outside the courthouse, Snowy neighed, as if understanding the significance of the moment. The crowd gathered on the steps erupted in applause and cheers. The white horse reared elegantly, his majestic figure silhouetted against the blue sky like a living symbol of triumph. "Can we go home now?" Sophia asked, her eyes shining with happiness. "I want to tell Snowy everything." But before they could leave, Judge Thompson made one last announcement that surprised everyone. Considering the extraordinary role this animal played, he declared, a small smile playing on his lips, "I also decree that the horse known as Snowy be officially registered as an emotional support animal, with all the rights and privileges such status confers." Pete, who was present at the hearing, couldn't contain an exclamation of joy. "That means he can go anywhere with you, Sophia, even to school." The news made the girl's eyes widen with surprise and happiness. As Edward and Regina were led out of the room, Sophia noticed something surprising. She no longer felt fear looking at her father. Instead of the terror that once dominated her, there was only a quiet certainty that this chapter of her life was definitively closed. Maria was already making plans as they left the courthouse. "We'll have a special celebration with chocolate cake, your favorite, and a surprise I've been preparing for weeks." Her eyes sparkled with the well-kept secret. On the way home, Snowy accompanied the Miller's car as always, his white coat gleaming in the afternoon sun. People on the street stopped to wave and smile, already familiar with the sight of the horse escorting his precious charge. Upon arriving home, Maria's surprise was revealed. She had transformed part of the garden into a small, adapted riding ring, complete with ramps and special supports that would allow Sophia to develop a unique form of equine therapy with Snowy. "Dr. Diaz helped me plan everything," Maria explained, moved by Sophia's ecstatic reaction. "She says it will be perfect for her recovery, both physically and emotionally." The rest of the afternoon turned into a true community celebration. Neighbors appeared with food and gifts, children ran through the garden, and Snowy grazed peacefully near his little charge, occasionally approaching for affection. "You know," Pete commented, sitting beside Sophia as they watched the activity, "some people say there are angels disguised among us. I think Snowy is one of them." The girl smiled, stroking the pendant on her neck. "It's not a disguise," she replied with the wisdom only children possess. "He's an angel just the way he is, for legs and all." Sheriff Brody, who also attended the celebration, brought a special gift, an honorary plaque for Snowy, officially recognizing his bravery and dedication. "It's the first time we've done something like this for an animal," he explained, "but it's also the first time we've met a hero like him." Jack and Maria watched the scene, their hearts overflowing with love. Their family, once just the two of them, was now 4, counting Snowy, of course. The horse seemed to smile in his own equine way, knowing his mission to protect Sophia had evolved into something much bigger. He had helped create a new family, united by the purest and truest love. "You know what I miss most about Mommy?" Sophia asked Maria softly as they watched the sunset together. "The way she used to say that true love always wins in the end." Her eyes shone with tears of longing and gratitude. "I think she was right, wasn't she?" 1 year had passed since the trial. The miller's small cottage, once so quiet, now overflowed with life and joy. The garden, in full spring bloom, displayed a special vibrancy, as if nature itself celebrated the happiness residing there. Sophia, now 7, had blossomed in ways no one could have imagined. Her equine therapy sessions with Snowy had strengthened not only her body but also her self-confidence. "Look at this, Snowy," she called out, executing a perfect maneuver in the adapted riding ring. The white horse followed every move with loving attention, his intelligent eyes never leaving his little rider. Maria, watching from the porch, couldn't hold back a proud smile. The transformation of the former Montgomery estate was also remarkable. With money from the Special Trust Fund, Jack had turned the property into an equine therapy center, where other children with special needs could experience the same kind of love and healing Sophia found with Snowy. "Every new smile is a victory," Jack commented to Pete as they watched a therapy session. The former climber now worked part-time at the center, helping train other horses, though none displayed Snowy's special gift. Dr. Diaz had become a constant presence in the family's life, more like a friend than a therapist. "Sophia's progress is a case study," she often said. "The power of unconditional love, especially coming from such an unexpected source as Snowy, proves that miracles happen daily." Sophia's room, once decorated with dreams and hopes, now showcased real achievements. Medals from small para-equestrian competitions shared space with photographs of happy moments. The dream catcher, still hanging in the window, no longer needed to ward off nightmares. They had given way to sweet, peaceful dreams. "Mommy would be so proud," Sophia said one afternoon as Maria braided her hair. "She always said I was stronger than I thought. I think Snowy helped me discover that strength." News about Edward and Regina rarely reached the Miller house, and when it did, it was met with serenity. Sophia had learned that forgiving didn't mean forgetting, but rather freeing oneself from the weight of the past to build a lighter future. Snowy, now officially recognized as an emotional support animal, accompanied Sophia on her daily adventures. At school, he waited patiently in the adapted courtyard, becoming a beloved mascot for all the students. His presence turned every ordinary day into something special. "You know what I love most about our story?" Sophia asked during a family picnic in the garden. "It shows that family doesn't have to be blood to be real." Her eyes scanned the beloved faces around her, including Snowy's attentive muzzle, as he delicately took carrots from her hand. Sheriff Brody, during his regular visits, was always moved to see the progress. "Sometimes, justice works in mysterious ways," he commented once. "Who knew a horse could teach us so much about love and loyalty?" The community had embraced the Miller family in an extraordinary way. The Equine Therapy Center became a hub for gatherings and celebrations, where stories of overcoming adversity were written daily. Snowy, naturally, was the main star, inspiring confidence in every new child who arrived. On one particularly special morning, Sophia prepared for her first formal para-equestrian presentation. Dressed in a white outfit that matched Snowy's coat, she was the living image of determination and grace. "Nervous?" asked Maria, adjusting the ribbon in her hair, pink as always. Sophia smiled, touching the horse pendant on her neck, now accompanied by a small silver medal. "No," she replied simply. "Snowy is with me, and when we're together, nothing is impossible." As if to confirm her words, the white horse approached, gently touching her shoulder with his muzzle. Jack, watching the scene, felt his eyes well up. "Your mother was right," he said softly. "True love always wins in the end, and sometimes, it comes on four legs with a heart bigger than the world." The morning sun bathed the riding ring in golden light as Sophia and Snowy prepared for their presentation. In the audience, smiling faces and emotional eyes witnessed not just a performance, but the celebration of a love that had transformed tragedy into triumph, pain into joy, and an ordinary horse into a guardian angel. "Let's go, my white angel," Sophia whispered to Snowy, her smile shining like the stars her mother loved so much. "We have more stories to write."